aspects of the peace agreement and its assistance to civil implementation tasks, and you'll hear a bit about that in our briefing this morning. Canadians have been involved in the forefront of all of that at the command level. It's Canadians who've been working the knitting needles that have stitched this multinational brigade together, and it's Canadians who command and control its operation on a day-to-day basis. And down at the working level, you'll be aware, I think already, that there's a lot of activities that go into an operation of this type, and Canadians have been involved in all of those, whether it's out on the line in OPs and vehicle checkpoints and patrols, or whether it's back in BK doing supply and transportation and postal and laundry and bath tasks. We've been doing all of that in the same way that other nations have had their soldiers doing all of those tasks. And our soldiers have done an outstanding job. They've, quite frankly, been magnificent. They've got much cause to be proud, and I take every opportunity to tell them that. And I think Canadians at large have reason to be proud as well, and I encourage you to take every opportunity to tell them that when you get back home. So we're going to give you a couple of briefings this morning. We do a lot of briefings around here. It's not going to give you everything you need to know, but it'll give you some of it, and it's a place to start. As you've no doubt already found out, it's the soldiers out here who are going to give you your best interviews. So I encourage you to speak to as many as you can. They all have something to say, and it's all very, very pertinent and very articulately expressed. They are by far our best spokesmen. If there's anything that we can do for you in the course of your stay here that we haven't done yet, that is
in the brownish color is the Serbia, excuse me. Just to point on the triangle itself, Bosnia-Herzegovina, for geographical size, if you were to take Nova Scotia, bend it in half, you have basically the same size Bosnia-Herzegovina. So it's not a huge country we're talking about. When we look at some of the maps, it kind of gets a distorted impression of how big and how small it is. Next slide, please. Okay, this shows the Bosnia-Herzegovina, how it's broken down into the IFOR deployment. Basically, there are three sectors. You have M&D North, which is the American sector, based out of Tuzla, the city of Tuzla. You have M&D Southeast, which is the French sector, and that's based mostly out of Mostar and Sarajevo. In our area, which is called M&D Southwest, which is commanded by, has the Brit Division, and the Brit Division is based out of Banja Luka. The area here in blue, the Canadian Brigade section, same as you see, and you'll see this throughout all the briefing depicted here on this map. It's basically about 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers in length and width, and it is a rather large area for our brigade operations. Next slide, please. Okay, we are located here. Once again, this is only our area of operations. We are located here in Camp Ćoralići. See some numbers below them. That's the population figures that was here prior to the war. And obviously do not reflect what is actually in the towns now, but they give you an overall view of how big and how small the various towns are. Okay. Starting in the north, Velika Kladuša, Kazin Ćoralići, where we are located now, Bihać, city of Bihać, Kulan Vakuf, Bosanski Krupa, Bosanski Petrovac, Bosanski Novi, Prijedor, Ljubija, Sanski Most, and Cluj. Once again, anything on this side of what we call the IEBL, or the green line here, is either Muslim or Croat, mostly in this case Muslim. Anything on this side is Serb. So what I'll do now is go through a quick history of what happened in the B. Okay, as we know, the war started in April, the 6th of April.
We start off, we have the peace agreement itself. And that peace agreement contains 11 annexes. 11 annexes. 2 of them, 1A and 1B, concern the military side of it. That's very important to remember here. So the first one, 1A, gives us the authority to establish military security, to do all the things that we're supposed to do, and 1B establishes the inter-entity boundary line, the IEBL that you've heard about so much. So what we have done is establish military security. That is the role of IFOR. By the military mandate, we've been given under the GFAP. The remaining annexes, the 9 other remaining annexes, deal primarily, or almost exclusively, with the civilian responsibilities. So we talk about regional stabilization and democratic elections. We're talking about the...
We've talked about the influence of Avdic. Yesterday we heard about things regarding the the economic situation here, the return of refugees, what would you say is the single biggest threat to the success of this mission right now in this region?
Threat, I don't know. There are problems that have yet to be solved, and I would say one of the most important problems is the return of displaced persons. Normal conditions will not be achieved in this country until people have been able to return to their homes. It's also one of the processes that would underpin a successful election. And we have a role in that we've been tasked to assist in the establishment and maintenance of civilian freedom of movement, and I believe we've established a physical environment in which that can take place. Now people need to have the confidence that they would be safe to return to their homes, and that has not yet been achieved.
You walk out the streets here, I see a lot of young men, some in uniform, some not, wandering around from cafe to cafe. Is that worrisome to you?
I don't see it as a problem for us. It's a problem for the local administrations to find jobs for these people.
But I guess in terms of having a lot of young guys with nothing to do on their hands who just finished, killing each other, is that a potential problem, like a military problem?
No, I don't believe it is.
No?
No.
You don't think there's a will then for them to continue?
No, the will is there to maintain the ceasefire, absolutely. They're tired of killing. No one wants to go back to war, and they see our presence here as essential to maintaining the present stability, the present military security, so they don't have to go back to war.
Have you been advising the Canadian government D&D people on whether you think that we should be staying here, and what's been their response when you've been talking to them?
No, I'm not providing that kind of advice directly. I'm providing reports on what we've been doing here, my assessment of how it's going. The National Defense Headquarters provides that kind of input.
You've been here since, I guess, mid-December, and others have followed soon after that. Have there been any touchstones? Have there been any moments that you're really going to remember from this mission as being particularly successful, or things that have really stood out in your mind?
I think arrival here in the middle of the winter into pretty difficult conditions and having to put it all together will be a significant memory. There have been a number of flashpoints that we had to deal with, which caused us to deploy troops as a precautionary measure, as a deterrent measure. I'll certainly remember those. But other than that, each week has had its excitement and a lot of memorable occasions.
Any particular exigencies involving units that come from countries that aren't traditional NATO countries? There was Bangladeshis here before, there's New Zealanders around. It seems almost like kind of a youth hostel or something in some respects. Right?
I think that the Czechs in particular have done very well for us, and they've had some particularly difficult problems to deal with. The situation in Odeka, which is a town astride the inter-entity boundary line, a town divided by the war, and people wanting to come back together, and some serious confrontations between crowds that took place there. The Czechs had to handle that, and they did it with a tremendous amount of restraint and discipline. Shots were fired, and that's the only place where shots were fired by NATO forces in my area of operation, but most of them were into the air or the ground, and to good effect, and they were able to manage the situation without anyone being hurt.
In your
it's
view,
a great credit to them.
In your view, is Czechoslovakia, or is the Czech Republic a country fit to join NATO?
Absolutely, yeah. They got fine soldiers. I have no trouble in accepting Czechs into my formation. It's been a privilege for me.
Okay.
Why is it that the locals respect IFOR more than UNPROFOR?
UNPROFOR gets a bad rap, and it's related to their mandate. UNPROFOR would have liked to have done more. They were not permitted to do more because they didn't have the authority. We have the authority, and we brought the wherewithal to support that authority. People know it. They see that we've been successful, and we get respect for that.
Is that what it is? Is it just the results that... Because they're cooperating more with you, though. Was it something sort of political or pragmatic or something?
No, results speak for themselves, yeah.
Because
if we'd come here and failed, we'd not be particularly popular either. We would be viewed as an army of occupation, and we're not. We're viewed as a very positive presence here.
Well, I've got you up close. I want you to repeat what you said in there earlier. It sounds better this way. What have the people been saying to you when you've been talking to them in the streets, the locals, vis-a-vis your presence
They
here?
want us to stay. They want us to stay until the job's done. And the job will be done when there's a lasting peace in this country. And they see military security as being an essential precondition to the achievement of that lasting peace. Military forces aren't going to impose a lasting peace. There's a lot of civil processes which will ultimately achieve that objective. But they can't operate effectively without us here.
I'm wondering on the Abdic thing, why is Croatia harboring Abdic? We've heard that...
Okuni Day, I can't answer that question.
No?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. No, I would ask you is just in terms of, you're going to be coming to Land Force Western area, right?
Sure am.
Okay, what I guess does being over here, how will that change, I guess, what you do over in Canada?
I don't think it's going to change anything I do in Canada. This experience has confirmed for me that we're doing the right things with our soldiers to prepare to go abroad and represent Canada effectively. And we'll continue to do those things in Western area. Those are the things that are being done there now. I'm not going to change anything.
I guess in terms of there's also, I guess, a policy within the Canadian government right now to sort of downsize the military. So you've had a chance to see our military in theater, in this particular theater, the hotspot. What perspective can you give us on that in terms of?
The government's already recognized that it can't downsize its army any more than it already has. In fact, it's reinforced its army to the degree that's possible, given budgetary constraints, so that we can continue to do this kind of operation.
Given that when you get out to take over as the head of Land Forces Western area, I think the sort of deconstruction of Chilliwack will be complete. That will leave BC with no regular forces, land forces units. Does that pose any sort of risks to British Columbia in your view?
No, there will continue to be regular forces in British Columbia, but they'll be naval forces primarily. And we have the ability to deploy land forces fairly quickly if the requirement exists.
Well, does the absence of land forces pose or present any challenges either to you guys in Edmonton or to the people of BC if something happens, a disaster or something?
We have reserve forces in the province, and they can be mobilized quite quickly for those kinds of tasks. I don't see it as a problem.
Okay. In your last 6 months being here, sir, you've seen the population go through a lot of changes. Can you perhaps describe those to me?
Run that one by me again, please.
The population, the general population in the last 6 months have gone through a lot of changes.
Here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you perhaps sort of give us a thumbnail sketch of what you've seen?
Well, we've seen this area come back to life. When we first arrived, the towns were more or less dead. There was no light. There were no utilities. There was nothing in the shops, or the shops were closed. It's amazing what 6 months can do, 6 months apiece. The cafes came back first. There's now bread in the bakery, and there's goods in most of the shops, and the discos are open. There's lights on at night. The traffic's on the highways, not making it any easier for us to get around, but it's a good sign.
So you're seeing things come back to some sort of sense of normality?
Far from normality yet, but certainly moving in the right direction.
How long will it be before this country completely rebuilds, assuming the peace process is, stays in place and doesn't fall apart?
It's very much a long-term process. It's been estimated that 60 to 70% of the accommodation in this country has been damaged or destroyed. It's going to take a long time to rebuild it. I think World Bank has estimated that $6 billion would be required. Others have put the figure as high as $15 billion, and that money has not been forthcoming yet.
Why not?
I don't know, maybe skepticism about Bosnia being a good investment, but the longer that the peace is maintained, the more that's achieved. I think that the international community is likely to be more forthcoming with that kind of funding.
When will, I guess, people from, say, Canada, like the refugees that went to Canada, we have many of them there, be, I guess, welcome, or will there be something here for them? Like, how many years would that be before they could, say, return?
I don't have a crystal ball. They may never be welcome, and that's what we're being told by some people. But we would hope that over time, people will become more tolerant. That memories maybe will be shorter rather than longer. That some of the processes that are necessary as preconditions would take place: elections, the establishment of more democratic conditions, some of the civil reconstruction, so that people will feel that it's safer to come home.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
One last final question. What is one of your favorite memories going to be of this area? Perhaps the people, the troops?
I think it's the great job the troops have done, and the high morale, the esprit with which they've tackled those kinds of jobs. Yeah, it's been a great experience. Just reinforces all the good feeling I have about Canadian soldiers.
And how do you feel about the 2 Brigade itself, your home unit?
We call it back home the Brigade of Choice, and I think the Canadians ought to be pleased that 2 Brigade was chosen for this job. I think we've done an outstanding job, if I can say that myself.